This week is about justice, and you have a few videos to watch this time, so I'm not going to be too long in talking to you, but just a few things on it. The prophet Micah, and you should read the Bible, I'm going to say that a lot. The prophet Micah says, this is all God asks of you, is to act with justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. So the first thing you want to notice there is that you have justice first and then mercy. So those two things are seen often as opposites in this world. But for God, he has both. He is a God of justice and mercy. But you'll also notice that the third one is humility. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here in just a bit. Hopefully I do a good job of this. I don't write scripts for these. I just go for it. And if I were in the room with you teaching this, this is what you'd get. Except that with your comments and stuff, it makes it better. I miss having people to ask questions more. Although I do enjoy some of the questions I get in the responses. It's very nice when you do that. Okay, so justice and mercy. Justice is giving people their due. At the easiest and simplest explanation. We're going to get deeper into that, and you'll see it in some of the videos. But mercy is what we give somebody that's done wrong, or where we had a right to something and we choose not to exercise that right. So when someone steals something of ours and we could send them to jail, but you have mercy and you don't. And you have to decide when the time is to do that and when not. Because sometimes, done right, if we did our justice system right in the country, we would send people to jail when that was necessary for them to become who they could be. It's something that we never even talk about now. Some people call it restorative justice. We're going to get into that a little bit. The idea is to restore the person to what they could be. And sometimes it takes something like, getting in trouble with the police and maybe even going to jail. For some people, changes them. I've mentioned Sean Hopwood before, who went to prison for a crime and then came out and became a lawyer and worked to free people that were in there unjustly and to work to improve the criminal justice system, which he had seen close up. And somewhere in prison, he decided to change his life and live a good life. And he actually did it. He truly was restored. So I talk about him more than once because it's a great example of how it should work. And I have known other people that went through that experience and came out the better for it. That doesn't mean we should be, oh, great, let's put everybody in jail. No, but sometimes that's the right thing. There are people that will say that nobody should be in jail ever, no matter what they do. Let the murderers out, let everybody out, and everything will be fine. And we'll talk to them. They won't hurt anybody anymore. No, that's just not the way that people are. So it's a difficult thing. We have to use our wisdom. We have to learn. We have to observe. We have to pay attention to figure out what is justice in a particular situation and what is mercy, and should we show mercy? And is the mercy that they're not punished, or is the mercy that they are? We talked about self-defense before. And what nobody ever talks about, and if you ever hear of this, tell me if anybody's ever said this before, because I think that'd be interesting. For some of you in class, I know that you might get this. But in self-defense, if somebody's coming to kill you, you're not required to defend yourself. You can choose to let them do it, to make some point, like in the case of some saints and everything. But in self-defense, you could be preventing somebody from being a murderer. In saving your own life, you actually could make it so that they're not guilty of murder and that they could go on, and maybe they go to jail, maybe they don't. But in defending yourself, they had help in avoiding something that's wrong. And then maybe someday they'll be glad. So it's a different way of looking at self-defense, not just about preserving your own life, but really preserving the life of your attacker. because they can go through the rest of their life without that guilt of having killed someone. Now, they may have guilt for trying to, and if they hurt you, they may feel guilt over that, and you can forgive them and help them to heal and help them to become what they should be. But this is a totally different way of looking at things. This is not the world's way of looking at stuff. So that's part of the encouragement here, is to look at things with the eyes of Christ. Look at them with the eyes of God. And in fact, a lot of justice comes naturally when we love others and look at them as God loves them, as God looks at them. So those are all things to think about. And then the third thing, though, was to walk humbly with God. And here's the idea: is sometimes we get justice wrong. Sometimes we think something was the right thing to do, and then we don't do it, or we do it and it turns out to be the wrong thing, and we make mistakes. So humility is accepting of that. It's understanding that we're not going to get it perfect, and that when we make a decision, we always allow, I could be wrong. If we defend ourselves in the case of self-defense, we could decide later that maybe there was something better. Maybe we should have just run away. And if we run away and it seemed like the best decision at the time, we might decide that instead we should have stayed to help that person do better, or to defend somebody, or whatever. But the idea is that we can sometimes second guess and go, what, that was the wrong thing to do. And then 10 years later, we could go back to saying the original thing was the right thing to do. And having the humility to understand that we can make mistakes, and that we will. And it's not that it's okay, it's that we accept that it will happen. We accept our limitations. We're not God. We don't absolutely know what the most just thing is to do. We don't necessarily know how to show mercy, or when to show what kind of mercy. It's just, and living with that, learning to live with the idea that we don't necessarily always know what to do, and we just work our way through. I listened to you in some of your responses, and you're going through that. You're trying to figure things out, and you go, well, this thing before, now it's not so good. And, I used to think this, now I think that. And that's being human. That's okay. And that can bring humility, especially making mistakes. When we make mistakes, it helps remind us that we're human beings and that we don't really see things the way that God does. We don't have perfect vision. So I hope that kind of helps. A couple of really concrete things. And I really, really want you to think about thinking. The idea that we have to make decisions using everything. We have to use our head and our heart. God gave us intellect. He gave us our brain, and we're supposed to use it. And some people say, no, don't use your brain, just use your heart. Go with what your heart tells you to do. And, there's a place for that. But your mind has to tell you when that is. And the two have to work together. The idea of integration is that we take everything that we are and use it together in a good way. We use our brain, we use our heart, we use our body, we use everything we've got. For that matter, we use the advice that others give us. We listen to other people. We look at people's good examples. We look at people's bad examples. This is all part of life. It's part of a thinking life, and it's a joyous thing. Oh my goodness, if you can do this, where you really are using everything you've got, it's great. Okay, so let me give you an example of a couple of things. Now, you see plenty in there, and it's completely true that we have the preferential option for the poor. That means that we will always consider the poor in the decisions we make. We will consider the needs of those around us. And let's take the example that somebody is on the street. Most of us aren't going to be writing laws and making the big public stuff or running a $1 billion charity or something. For us, justice generally comes down to the people around us. So the typical thing, all of us at one time or another, there's somebody that asks us for money. Now, I had a guy ask me for money at a gas station, and the guy was driving this really nice truck that must have cost 60 grand or something. I don't know. It was way nicer than anything I've ever had, certainly more expensive than any car I've ever owned. And he said, oh, I don't have any money and I need $5 in gas for my truck. I don't know why he's doing that. But Jesus said, give to all who ask of you. And for the most part, that's what I do. Now, don't start asking me for money all the time, because that's, no. Just no, that's not the same thing. I mean, unless you really need it. So, yeah, I gave him $5 or something, whatever. But so some people say that if there's somebody, not the guy with the nice truck, this is different. But, some people say that if somebody comes up to you and asks for money, they're probably just going to go use it to buy beer. They're going to go buy drugs with it, so don't give them any money. I've had lots of people tell me this. Don't give people any money, because they're just going to go use it for something bad. And what I want you to think about is this process of working this out in what we call the mind of Christ, using the scriptures, using the things that we've learned in class, and really think about it. So here's how I reason through it. It doesn't mean you have to come to the same conclusion that I do. I just want you to see the process. And if you want, you can share about how this process would work for you. Don't just tell me, oh, I agree or I disagree, but get the process, get the thinking that's involved. So is it true that somebody that asked me for money could go and use it to buy alcohol? It's entirely possible. I actually had a guy not that long ago that came up to me on the street and said, could I just have some money, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just going to go buy booze with it. I just need a drink. And, so now he's really put it in my responsibility. If I give him that, am I committing to him getting drunk? Am I helping him? Am I helping him to sin? So this was really it was kind of a cool situation. I've never had anybody do it that way before. And so I said, well, you put me in a funny position. And so this is the thing. I'm just honest with people. So I just said, you've put me in a funny position, because I don't want to give you money for you to go get drunk, because that's not a good thing for you. You know that. And he goes, yeah, I know. And I said, but on the other hand, Jesus said, give to all who ask of you. And I would normally give you the money. So what I'm going to do, I said, is I'm going to talk to you for a minute, and then I'm going to give you the money. And what I told him was, and this is what I'm telling you, this is my reasoning. I simply told him how I work this in my head. And I said, God gave us free will. He gave us the ability to choose. And he gave us the ability to choose. Why? So that we would be able to freely choose love. So we could freely choose to do the right thing. So I said, so here's the money. And I said, I want you to know that you have that choice. You don't have to use this to go and get drunk. You can use this money for something better. You could just go get some food. You could do whatever with it, but you don't have to do that. It's your choice. And so now I've given it to you. You can do whatever you want, but I hope you choose the right thing. And then we talked a little bit more, and he talked to me about his life and everything. And it was really nice. It was a great moment. So that's my fundamental thing on it, is that when I give them money, I am respecting them as a human being. That's a big part of justice, is to respect other people. I let that person keep the choice to do good or evil. I don't take the choice away from them. If I don't give them the money, I've taken the choice away. I've said, I'm not going to trust you with this. But God trusted me with life. God trusted me with life even knowing that I would sin. So why would I not want to be like God? Why would I not want to give this person that choice? Now, in the case of that young man that I talked to, he had he got the little sermon, so he kind of he had to really think about that. And I'm sure he did. I don't know what he did with it, but I know that it got him thinking a little bit. Maybe it'll get you thinking a little bit. But I don't want to make somebody less human. I want them to live and flourish as a human being. And in doing that, I cannot take their choice away. So I'm letting them choose. So, that's how my reasoning works. It's grounded in a fundamental respect for the person. I remember what the church teaches about us having that freedom. And I want that person to be fully human. and they aren't fully human if I take away their choice, if I take away their choice to do the right thing. Now, somebody will say, well, wait a minute, when you put somebody in jail, if you put a murderer in jail, you're taking away their choice because now they're not free to go out and murder somebody. But that's not what freedom's about. Freedom's about the freedom to do the right thing. And if somebody's going to do things that harm other people, then we have an obligation to protect those other people. So one of the things that happens is people will frequently talk about justice at the expense of other people. So they'll say that they're being just and merciful to one person, but then by doing that, sometimes they're being unjust to someone else. We've had some cases that you may have read about where there's people that say, well, I know what's right for everyone, and so I'm going to make this thing happen. I'm going to do this thing that's going to be good for other people, but I'm going to have to lie to convince them. And there's been some public figures that have done this recently and even in past years, where they said, it's just better if I don't tell anybody. I'll just tell people what will make them do the right thing. Even though it's not true, I will tell them something that's a lie to get them to do the right thing. But in a way, haven't you taken away their choice? Because then they're making their decision based on a lie. And if somebody lies to you and tries to fool you into doing the right thing, then you didn't really do the right thing. You didn't get the choice because they set it up in a fake way. So I hope this makes sense. The other thing is, some people think that a matter of justice is, giving the right amount of money to different charities and everything like that. And we have an obligation, and this is part of justice too, to figure out where we should put the money that will actually do some good things. We have some things that we donate to, for Carol and I, and in those things, we really do try to be careful that it's not going to advertising and stuff like that. Because you'd be surprised, if you do your research on this, you find a lot of charities spend very little money on their mission, on what they say they're doing. And they spend most of it gathering more money. And then the folks that run them are millionaires and they're taking all this money in. None of this is justice. So that's something to think about. People use the call to justice or the church's teaching or compassion or whatever you want to say. They sometimes use it as a weapon just to get you to do what they want you to do. But you have to use your own brain. Now, there's all the big causes and everything else. But what I wanted to point out is that justice is something we do with each other every day. Every kindness we show to somebody respects them as a human being, and it's giving them their due. They deserve respect. You've probably heard somebody say, well, you have to earn my respect. You have to earn my respect, and then I'll respect you. No, you just respect people. Start with respect. And then if they really prove that they're not worthy of it, then you show mercy and you continue to respect them as a human being. But that doesn't mean you necessarily believe everything they tell you. It's disrespectful to disbelieve somebody without cause. And when somebody lies to you a lot, you're not obliged to keep believing them. If somebody is abusing you, if somebody's hurting you, you're not obliged to just keep taking it. That's not the option against self-defense. There's a certain dignity that you have, and you have to protect yourself too. You have to do justice to yourself, and you have to show yourself mercy, just as you would do it to anybody else. The commandment says, love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say love your neighbor more than yourself. It doesn't say love your neighbor less than yourself. Your neighbor is just like you. You're just like me. We're all one people. And it doesn't matter who's older or younger and all the other stuff and everything. Human beings are human beings, regardless of age, regardless of money, regardless of height, weight, being good looking, being bad looking, I don't know, anything. Human beings. So that's something to think about. So use your brain, figure out what you should do, and understand that when somebody tells you what's required of you for justice, don't always take it for granted. You've got to know the scriptures. You've got to know the gospel. You have to pray. It takes a lot to gain enough wisdom to know what to do. And if you're ever in a position of public policy, if you're ever working in the government and everything, it gets really tricky because people there are very often pretty dishonest. I've been involved in it enough to see it. And it doesn't take much. If you really are paying attention out there and watching, you can see how little honesty there really is. People make a big deal out of being, I mean, people in charities and stuff, sometimes, they make a big deal out of what they're doing. I'm not sure they're really doing what they're claiming they're doing. So, I'm just being honest with you. You can't always believe everything you're told. So that's why you're on your own. You have to make the best judgment you can. One more thing about justice is and we talked about this earlier, I think, it's part of justice to tell each other the truth. Everybody deserves the truth. The only exception is when somebody will do some great evil because you told them something that really wasn't your place to tell them. So you might have told them the truth. It's a little bit of a special case. Most of us are never going to be in that situation. But we do have a right to the truth, and other people have a right to the truth. So don't lie. Whatever you do, make it your rule that you will always tell the truth or be silent. One of the two. That is another way that we show that we are fair, that we are just with each other. You can't act justly and be lying to people all the time. It's like I was saying before, if we're lying to somebody to persuade them to do the right thing, that's just wrong. It doesn't matter we're trying to do a good thing and then go back to humility. Maybe we're not. Have the humility to know when your intentions aren't necessarily good. Sometimes we fool ourselves and say, oh, this is a good thing to do. And it's not. We just fooled ourselves into it a little bit. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. Act with justice. Love mercy at every opportunity, forgive, and don't always demand your rights with everybody. There are times that you must, but other times let it go. In the individual stuff, especially with the people around you, with family and friends, somebody that gets in your way, you're walking and they get in your way, it's okay to both of you to say, excuse me, and laugh a little bit and, oh, I'm so sorry, and there's beauty in this. It's possible to live in such a beautiful way, to live like Christ and in justice and mercy and humility. Anyway, thank you.